Well, hello, Brother Williams.
Hello,
Welcome.
yeah, thank you very much, Pat.
I'm so blessed to have you here.
Oh,
Literally, I feel blessed.
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous because first time I'm sitting like this.
In front of a mic and everything.
Yeah.
It's okay, it's okay. It's just me talking, right? Well, for those who are listening, let's talk about you first. Everybody wants to know who Brother Williams is. Of course, you are a brother of St. Patrick's Association.
St. Patrick's. We are called a congregation.
Congregation.
A congregation or a society of brothers of St. Patrick. And we are originally Irish based.
Irish based.
Yeah.
I have read about Brother Daniel Delaney.
Yes.
In the 1800s.
He was the founder of this society in Ireland 200 years ago. 200 years ago, when Ireland was under Britain. And Ireland was basically, in Christianity, we have the Roman Catholics. Roman Catholics, they come under the leadership of the Pope.
Okay.
They come under the leadership of the Pope. And Ireland was basically 100% Roman Catholics. Then at some period in history around the 14th or 15th century in England, King Henry VIII, he somehow believed that he should have a son to succeed him. And in those years, between one country and another, they married for political reasons.
That still happens in India. We have arranged marriages for political reasons.
Yeah.
Anyways, King Henry.
So Henry VIII, he married a princess from Spain. Spain was a Catholic country. England also was a Roman Catholic country, paying allegiance to the Pope. Then Henry VIII married this girl, a princess by the name of Catherine. She was the princess of Spain. And then she didn't give birth to a boy. She only... So then Henry was determined to remarry. So he fell in love with one of the courtesans, and he wanted to marry this Anne Boleyn. And so then he gave some reason to saying that his wife, the Spanish princess, was actually his elder brother's wife.
Oh.
And his elder brother had died before the marriage was consummated. So there was some custom that the next brother should marry the widow.
That's a custom.
That was a custom. That he should marry the widow if the marriage is not consummated. And also for political reasons between Spain and England, he married her. So now he said that, strictly speaking, I should not have married her. And she's not able to give me an heir.
That is so funny.
So he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. But she objected. But he was determined. And somehow Henry VIII
went on to marry someone else.
He was determined to marry this Anne Boleyn. He was so he told this other lady that you're a widow and you're not able to give me an heir, and I'm going to marry her. So then he more or less forced her to marry him, but because he was a Roman Catholic. According to Roman Catholic custom, if your marriage is a legal marriage with a particular lady, you cannot remarry somebody else, or you cannot divorce.
Okay.
You see?
In Christianity, marriage is like a bond. You cannot break that bond.
Yeah. Unless it is found that there was some trickery and there was something wrong with the, sometimes infidelity or for some other reason that she's not able to bear a child. Known fact. there are some reasons in which cases the divorce can be given. But Henry VIII case, he could not get a divorce.
Okay.
And he had to get permission from the Pope,
Sad for him.
you see. So the Pope refused. And he sent a lot of emissaries all over these. Especially he had one chancellor by the name of, I forget his name. They have made a famous movie called Anne of a Thousand Days. Anne of a Thousand Days.
Anne of a Thousand Days.
Days.
Anne of a Thousand
This
Days.
is the second girl whom he married, Anne Bouland. When later on he married her and said she's the queen. She reigned only for 100 days. For 1,000 days. After that he executed her in order to remarry again. Altogether Henry VIII married 8 wives.
Executed him.
He got her executed because she refused to say that he told her to
make up some story or something like that, so that they can get divorced or something like that. She refused?
And she refused.
Oh.
She says, no, I am the official wife and you had promised that I will be the queen.
She wanted to put up the honor, have an honor.
That's right.
That was maybe important for her.
So he became the supreme. He broke away from the Catholic Church. Okay. His advisors, some advisors to him, told him, the only way you can marry Anne Boleyn is you break away from the church and you declare yourself as the head of the church in England. And that is how you have the Anglicans.
So the king would declare himself as the leader of the church itself. The
church
of the
itself.
Christian faith itself.
In England.
In England. Okay.
And
okay.
In England. And everybody had to, all his ministers and everybody had to accept him as now the leader, as the official leader of the Christian faith in England. And they are referred to as the Anglicans. The other one is the Roman Catholics. They had allegiance to the Pope. Now these people had to have allegiance to the king of England. Henry VIII was not only a king ruler, he was also the religious head.
So right now these
Anglicans
yes, have allegiance to the queen.
To the queen, yes.
Oh,
the Queen of England. The Queen of England is their head. You see. And then Henry VIII, what is the word used? Henry VIII got all his ministers and all these well-known people in England, you see, during his time.
Basically made a monarchy rule.
Yeah. He wanted all of them to agree with him that he is the head of the church. And many people who are Catholics disagreed. And he executed many of them. And one of the most famous chancellor in his time, the prime minister, was a person by the name of Thomas More. Thomas More.
Yeah, I have heard about him, I guess.
So he wanted him. He thought, like, if he gets all these important people to accept him as the religious leaders, then everybody else will say yes. Since these top fellas have agreed.
It's political, all political, I guess.
See? But so many people refused, and Thomas More also refused. And Thomas More was executed. He resigned his chancellorship, and his family people also told him, his daughters and his children. But Thomas More was a very staunch Roman Catholic. He believed in the supremacy of the Pope and in the teaching of the Catholic Church. He refused and he was executed. And they have made a movie on the life of this Thomas More. It's called A Man of a Thousand Days, Man of All Seasons.
Man of All Seasons.
Man of All Seasons is the name of that movie. It's available.
Everything is available.
Saint Thomas More. The Catholic Church has made him a saint because he stood by the teaching of the Catholic Church, and he was a good man, loyal to the Pope. So like that, this Henry VIII executed a lot of people. You see, so many hundreds of important people were executed during his time.
Talking about the Catholic Church today, right now, at this stage, in India especially, people are not that religious that they used to be. That is somewhat because of the Renaissance. After after science began, after exploration in science began, the faith in religion decreased a lot. In Christians, it's a bit different. On every Sunday, every Christian is supposed to attend Mass.
Yes.
But in Hindus, there is no particular structure as seen in Christianity. There is no structure.
Yes.
As a result, the youth today, they don't have the value systems. Mama rag do bas. Thank you. Thank you so much. My mother made this.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
So, as a result, people who are watching this, people who are listening to this right now, chances are that they're not a believer in religion, basically. Take any religion. Take Christianity, take Hinduism, basically anything. How do you think, how would you propose that religion is important to us? I mean, for me, I did my research, and for me, I read Jordan B. Peterson's Maps of Meaning, where he said that the existential nature of being consists of two fundamental things: a forum of things, and that extends for science, and a forum of meaning that extends to values, that extends to religion, myths, mythology, and structure, basically value in life. People don't follow religion. Do you think that somewhere something is going to go wrong? Should we follow religion? Should we accept these values today? I mean, because today reality is they're not. What do you think about that?
Well, you see, you have what we call organized religions. Christianity now started. Actually, the basis of Christianity goes back to the Jewish times.
Genesis 1.
Jewish times. And then Jesus Christ
came a lot later.
Came as a Jew. And the Jews were expecting somebody to come and free them from the Roman rule. According to their history, their past history, it was foretold that someday somebody will come, a king will come, a ruler, and he will lead the Jews and free them from the Roman rule.
I guess they actually believed that the Emperor Augustus was that ruler.
No. A Messiah. Somehow they had prophets who foretold that a Messiah would come one day and free them. And but Jesus Christ came. When he came, he said he is the Messiah, not to free them from the Roman rule, but to free them from certain other ideas that they had of God. Of God, and free them in that sense. You see, that free man from what, according to Christianity, freedom from sin, and and make them a people who can believe in a God of love and equality and various things. But and what Jesus did, some of these Jews did not come up to what the Jews expected of Jesus Christ. So they thought Jesus was questioning the way they were preaching religion, and the way they were suppressing the poorer people, and so Jesus questioned a lot of those things. So they thought Jesus was come to be against them rather than with them. And they thought, because of Jesus Christ, that more Jews would be killed by the Romans. So they had a custom, and they said, Jesus was only a revolutionary. He is questioning us and telling us, saying that we are not living. The Jews were very, very structured, you see, the followers of Judaism. They believed in Yahweh, and what they call Yahweh. Yahweh was the one God that Abraham is supposed to have. So they were followers of Abraham, you see. And they believed that a Savior would come to save them from the Roman rule. But Jesus came, he said, I have not come to save you from the Roman rule. I've come to set you free
from your sins.
From your sins. And from, not loving your neighbor and doing all kinds of other things,
So
injustice.
What would be the values, the top values that Jesus Christ, through his sacrifice, basically wanted to indulge in the society? What would be those 3, 4,
You
5
see,
values?
Jesus Christ was questioned, he said. Jesus Christ said, you live according to the teaching of Moses, 10 Commandments. Moses was supposed to be the person who
Freed the slaves.
The Jews were in Egypt. They had become, the Egyptians had enslaved them. And then they were working for for the Egyptians. Then they were hoping to get their freedom and go to some country that God had promised to give their ancestors, which was Israel. You see, the land of Canaan, which is now Israel. So Moses, finally, he was also a Hebrew. They were called Hebrews. He was somehow saved as a child and taken to the Egyptian queen. Princess was on the banks of the Nile, and she brought him up as her son. So he grew up in the as a princely man in the Pharaoh's palace, you see. So then later on, he came to know that he was not an Egyptian but a Hebrew.
And Hebrews were slaves?
Yeah, and Hebrews were slaves.
So basically, it was a shock for Moses that, he was supposed to be a prince, a nobleman.
That's right.
And he was a slave instead.
So that was the movie, The 10 Commandments. If you see the movie 10 Commandments, that will give you a whole picture of it.
The 10 Commandments.
So then Moses, when he found out that he was not a Egyptian but a Hebrew, then he was banished. He's supposed to have killed an Egyptian who was whipping or beating some of these slaves. And when he came to realize that he was himself a Hebrew, he is supposed to have killed an Egyptian a soldier or a man who was sort of overseeing the slaves working. He killed him. Then this news came to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh said, came to know that he's a Hebrew, so he was banished. So instead of killing him, he was given just sufficient food and water, and he was said, now you disappear into the desert area.
So the story is that he took the Jews, he freed the Jews, and he took them to that desert.
Yes.
And they lived there for how many years?
So then what happened was, then this Moses somehow survived. Okay. And he went he went across the desert, and somehow he survived and came to some place where some Hebrews were living. Not those who were under slavery. There were some other Hebrews living in some part, you see. So he came there, and then they were living at the foot of Mount Sinai. They were shepherds, and he came and he lived with them. And then while looking after the sheep, you see, of a person by the name
of community.
That community. A person by the name of Jethro. His name was Jethro. And he had about 6 or 7 daughters only. Okay. And he had his flocks of sheep and various things, living in an oasis. So under the Mount Sinai. So then Moses went up to the mountain. One day he used to see thunder and the mountain all lit up and all, and he was told that is the holy mountain of God, that these Jews believed in. Yahweh, that is his mountain, and nobody can goes there. But he said, no, I want to go and see, meet this God, who's supposed to be the God of the Hebrews, and they are all in slavery. So then he climbed up the mountain, went on top, and then when he went on top, he's supposed to have seen a bush, a burning bush, but it was not getting burnt. The whole bush was all lit up as if it was burning, and same time it was not getting burnt. So then a voice spoke to him and said, you're on holy ground, I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac, and I'm the God that these Hebrews are supposed to worship, and they are slaves, they are my people. So now you will go and you will go and talk to Pharaoh and try and really get them out of Egypt and bring them to this mountain to worship me, and then I will give them the land of Canaan that I promised to Abraham and his descendants. It's all history of the Jews, you see. So it's all based on the history of the Jews.
So that was Genesis 1. That was all
Exodus. That is called Exodus, not Genesis.
That
is called Book of Exodus.
Exodus.
Exodus means to go out.
Okay.
Exit.
Exodus.
To go out.
Yep.
So this movie, 10 Commandments, is one of those, grandeur movies. When it was made about 60s, in the 50s or 60s. Movies like Ben-Hur, 10 Commandments, they were spectacular movies. How they made those movies in those days. You see, even today, with all this modern technology and all this, how they made this movie, Ben-Hur especially, and 10 Commandments in those days. And there's one scene where the sea is supposed to be parting, and a passage. Yes, when they were escaping from Egypt, getting away, and after some time when they had left, Pharaoh decided to go and catch them and bring them back. And then these people were going into getting away from Egypt, you see, going to this promised land of Canaan. They came across the Red Sea, and now they had to cross it. So
Moses somewhat, I think plugged his staff or something.
Well, Moses had the staff that he had, which God was using as like a rod in his hand. So he stood up on a sort of a cliff, and he said, "I'll show you the power of God, your God, the God of the Israelites, the Hebrews. He will make a path for you to free you from the slavery of the Egyptians." And he stood up, and in the name of Yahweh, he prayed, and the power of God parted that sea and made a path with the water on both sides, and dry land. And you could see the water in the movie, like you see, like this. But it's amazing how they did that in the studio. And then the Jews, all these, went through the sea, and when they reached the other side, meanwhile the Egyptian army caught up with them, and they were following them also in this passage that was made by parting of the sea. And then after the Hebrews all reached the other side, then Moses again stood up with the rod, and the sea came back to its original, and all the Egyptians were killed.
They were drowned.
They were all drowned.
By the God of Hebrews.
And the Pharaoh, who was also leading the army, he goes back. He goes back with the army, everybody dead. He goes back to his palace, and there his wife is there with her dead son, so the only son who died. And Pharaoh says, Moses' God is really God. He is a true God. And the gods that we are worshipping is all false God. Their God is is really God. So it's a wonderful movie. Of course, it won't come to the cinema halls nowadays.
No.
But it was.
Nobody goes to cinema halls these days. Everyone watches movies online on their laptops or Netflix or.
Yeah, but Ten Commandments can be even shown in these multiplexes. But because there are lots of people now who may not have seen it. You see?
Most of my listeners wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, the Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur. In these movies they bring out a lot of true values. You don't have to believe exactly in what, but God is there. Religion, every person. In the beginning, religion comes in because of fear. There's some sort of a fear that there's some supernatural being is there. Kushwan Singh explains very well. I enjoy reading Kushwan Singh's books. He has written in some of his books with essays, on different topics. He explains very well, gives the reason why religion comes into. Everybody has to have some religion. And in the beginning, it starts off like this only. There's some fear, and then, all these kind of practices that come into religion. Of course, Jesus Christ, came. I don't know if he did not come to have an organized religion. He said, he told his disciples, go and preach.
He just gave the basic ideology of the
basic
foundation of Christianity.
To love your neighbor as yourself. You say, love your neighbor as yourself, and to do good to others, and to worship your God. But he did not start this Christianity as an organized Christianity. This started later, afterwards only.
It started around about 1200 years ago, right?
It started.
The Bible
was existing. The Bible is actually divided into two parts. Okay. What is called the Old Testament and New Testament. Old Testament is all about the history of the Jews, and then beginning of Jesus is coming. Then Christianity, the second part of
that is the New Testament.
Yeah, is the New Testament. In the New Testament, you have the 4 Gospels. Gospels is all about the life of Jesus and what he did during the 3 years that he lived. Went around preaching about God and giving people the correct idea of worshipping God and how it should be done. So,
with my take on religion, I read a lot of Jordan B. Peterson's work. He's a Harvard professor, and he studied religion a lot, especially Christianity. And he gave the most scientific basis of religion and why we need it. So basically, he told that our brain has evolved into 2 hemispheres. That is whole scientifically based thing. That those 2 hemispheres consist of basic 2 fundamental inputs. अगर मैं हिंदी में समझाऊं अपने listeners को, तो हमारे जो evolution हुआ है ना, evolution के हिसाब से हमारे जो fundamental being के 2 fundamental parts है, that is chaos and order.